Hey, mamas, you are listening to the Motherhood is Ghetto podcast. We all know motherhood can be a beautiful thing, but girl, it can also be ghetto. Join me as we discuss some of the best and worst parts of being a mom raising kids, all while trying to figure out this thing called life. This ghetto is a safe space, mamas. So, welcome to the hood. Hey mamas, welcome back to another episode of Motherhood is Ghetto. My name is Joy, and how y'all doing out there? If y'all doing all right, say amen, amen. um, I missed you guys last week. I didn't post an episode of the book club last week because your girl was tired, okay? I was so tired. Last weekend, I did Pilates for the first time, and listen here, okay? Listen here. Um, the workout was good, amen. And even though I could hardly walk after, and the next day was brutal. Talking about sore, I don't think I've ever been that sore my whole entire life. Like, I don't know, but it was a good workout, and I was happy to have the experience for the first time. And I will be going back. I will be going back because I did enjoy it. Um, Also, last week too, went out with some of my coworkers, and I did all this in one day. And then went out with some coworkers on the strip. We had a good time. And so by the time I got home, I was super tired. And then on Sunday, last Sunday, I did my daughter's hair. So your girl was just tired last weekend. So my apologies if you were anticipating an episode last weekend, but I got you today. So I'm glad you're here. Thank you so much for listening today. So I wanted to start off before we get into the book club meeting. I wanted to start off this episode with a question of the week, uh, if you will. And I think that I want to start doing this going forward before we get into our episode because I get asked all different kinds of questions from different moms. And then sometimes, based off my own experience, I share my opinion and, what I think. But sometimes some questions that I get stump me. And even with the questions that stump me or the questions that I'm able to, confidently give my opinion on, I'd like to share those on the podcast as questions of the week. So that way it gives you an opportunity to think of the question, or if you've thought of that question yourself but didn't know the answer, then hopefully this helps. So, and that's my only goal with this podcast is to help as many mamas as I can through this motherhood journey. Amen. So, the question of the week is, how do you discern the right time for your child to know the truth? Now, when I say truth, I'm not talking about the truth of Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny not being real. Like, not that type of truth. Because that's a whole different thing. But when I say truth, I mean like something that, you're withholding from your child, say for instance, if it's like a paternity thing and, maybe your child thinks like their mother or their father is their real father, but in actuality they were adopted. Like, do you ever plan to tell them? Are you waiting for the right time? And when do you know that's the right time? Um, Another example could be, say for instance, like your child, you see like your child interact with their friends, and you notice that their friends are kind of toxic, or like their friends are users, or their friends are not as supportive for your child, but your child is always super supportive for them. when do you know, like, when it's time to step in and be like, hey, I need to talk to you about something? You know, those friends you have, they don't seem like they're really your friends. And then when you make that decision, to tell your child the truth or to, let them in on kind of your point of view and what you see, when you do that, like, are you ready for the the outcome of it? Like, do you ready and prepare yourself if your child doesn't accept that? And if they don't believe you, like, are you okay with just letting them bump their own head? Or in the instance of the paternity, like, are you okay with your child being angry with you that maybe you didn't tell them the truth sooner? You know, like, how do you prepare yourself for a conversation when it's about telling your child the truth or sharing the truth with your child? And how do you decide when the time is right for them to know the truth? And this question of the week is my question to you mothers, because I genuinely would like to know. Because I feel like I've been in this situation a time or two, just explaining things to my kids and wanting to be very upfront and forthcoming. Um, but then sometimes I'm like, maybe that wasn't the right time to say that, or maybe this wasn't the right time. But in my eyes, I feel like any time is the right time for the truth. Amen. That's just my opinion, but I think that I want to re-examine that for myself. And then also too, I think about my upbringing and I think about my parents and I think about some of the things that I didn't know until I was an adult. And at first, like, it made me upset. And I was like, why didn't I know that? Or why didn't they tell us? Or like, why didn't we have like a family meeting or something like to discuss this? But then I was like, I don't even know if I would have been ready for that truth. Like, I don't know. Just to give you like a quick example, and if my dad is listening, apologies for putting you on the spot. But for a very long time, I didn't know my dad suffered from alcoholism, and I didn't know that he was diagnosed with depression. I didn't know that for a long time. I didn't know, and it was something that nobody ever talked about. I don't know what my brothers plural level of understanding was, and what they knew, but I know for as far as me, like, I had no idea. And and at first when I found out, I was like, how come we could have helped him as a family and helped him through it, but then I had to think, like, maybe my parents were using their best discernment, and and I feel like my parents probably knew me, best at that time and was like, maybe she wasn't ready for it. So I can respect that. But I just want to know how you come to that level, that acknowledgement and that knowing. I guess that's where my question lies. Because like I said, for me, I feel like every time is the time for the truth, because I'm a type of person, I don't like to be lied to. I don't like to be strung along, and I just want you to. I feel like at first I was a person where I would be like, okay, like, lie to me, sugarcoat it, like, just make me feel good. But now I'm like, just don't bullshit me, like, just let me know what it is up front, so that way I know how I can move accordingly. So, but that is the question of the week. um, Please feel free to DM me, and I'll probably use this as a clip or a snippet on the socials. So feel free to comment, DM me. I'll probably even put it in a Q&A at the on the show notes here. If you're listening on Spotify, I'll put it in the Q&A so that way you guys can leave your responses there as well for me to read. But yeah, So, let's get into today's book club episode. If you are new here, welcome. I recently started a book club on this podcast, and and I think it's going pretty well. The book that we are reading is The Black Girl's Guide to Financial Freedom: Build Wealth, Retire Early, and Live the Life of Your Dreams by the author Paris Woods. So, we last episode we wrapped up and summarized chapter 2, and we started on chapter 3, and chapter 3 was all about education. All about financing your education. And I think this is probably one of the longest chapters in the book, because she really wanted to drive a point home when it came to funding your education and funding it in a way that doesn't take you into debt. So, um, and I don't know if I mentioned it on the last episode, but when I got to this chapter, I almost skipped over it because I was like, my student loans are paid off. I don't have any student loan debt. I am not currently in school and I'm not funding anyone's education. So I was like, I could probably skip over this chapter. But something was like, no, Joy, read it because you got 3 kids. Amen. And they possibly may want to go off to college, one day. So maybe there's some information that I can pass down and impart onto my children when or if they, embark down that higher education journey. So I went ahead and read the chapter, and I'm glad that I did because I did take away a lot of gems in this chapter. And I, for one, am determined that if one or all my children do decide to go to college, I want to make sure that they are fully funded for it. So already started that. Like I've already started saving for the big 18. So so by the time they turn 18, they will have enough funds to be able to decide if they want to pursue higher learning, or maybe they just want to go into the workforce but they need some money for their first car, or they want to fund a business idea of their own and start up a business of their own. Whatever it is, by the time they turn 18, they will have the funds to be able to make a sound choice or a sound investment. Amen. But I thought Education Chapter 3 was a really great chapter. And yeah, this was really good. So I highly encourage you, if you haven't already read chapter 3, please read chapter 3, especially if you currently have student loan debt or if you're thinking about going back to school and funding your education through loans and stuff like that. This chapter was a good read. So let's go ahead, and I'm going to read the summary of chapter 3, and then we're going to get started on chapter 4. All right. So, summary of education. Where are you in your educational journey? Are you choosing between colleges or thinking about graduate degrees? This will determine your approach to debt-free education. If you're looking at colleges, merit-based and need-based scholarships are your friends. And low-income, high achievers should consider colleges that meet 100% of demonstrated need. If you are interested in graduate school, pursue a marketable degree and research ways to get your degree paid off for partially or in full by outside entities. If all else fails, pay cash. Find an affordable program, save up whatever you can to pay as much as you can in cash, and work your way through school so you can graduate debt-free. And then to wrap up the chapter, and if you have the book, you'll see that at the end of every chapter it has a putting it in practice, putting this chapter into action section. So at the end of this chapter, it says create a plan to earn your education without going into debt. You can use this table to document your initial research on school costs to determine how much additional money you'll need to cover your educational expenses. Next, you'll look for ways to cover the gap. So it has like a little table here where you can list your ideas for colleges, the net price of how much your education will cost, what you can cover in cash, and what you'll need as far as additional funds. And then lastly, it says, what are 3 ways you'll try to find additional funding based on your background and needs? Luckily for our society today, there's like side hustling is like that's the wave. So there's a plethora of side hustles out there that you can use or use to your advantage to fund your education. And luckily, our children's generation will have access to that too. So I feel like in I feel like when the Gen Z, like the generation that's like my kids' age, like from 10 to 13, and like the teenagers right now, I feel like when they go into college, like it's gonna be, I think we're gonna see a dip in the coming years, in the coming decades, on how the amount of American, or the percentage of Americans that are in a student loan debt or have student loan debt. I think as the years go on, we're gonna see a decrease in that for sure, because this type of information, as far as like student loans and debt and stuff, it just wasn't available. Like, it wasn't available back then. So yeah, I think our kids are more than likely in a better position now than maybe we were back in the day. Okay, so chapter 4 is called Get Out. So chapter 4 is all about getting out of debt. So if you're already in debt, making a plan to get yourself out of debt. So I'm going to start chapter 4, and yeah, let's get into it. So several years ago, I was on a work trip to visit one of my students when I decided to stop by the local Barnes and Noble bookstore. Whenever I travel for work, stopping by bookstores is one of my favorite activities. I can spend hours thumbing through different titles, picking up new ideas, and learning a little bit about a lot of different topics. Plus, there's always upbeat music playing and a Starbucks cafe where I can grab a drink to enjoy as I browse. On this particular trip, I ventured over to the personal finance section. Always a fan of picking up money tips, I browsed the titles and saw one that looked interesting. The book was facing outward to show the cover, which featured a smiling middle-aged guy holding a large pair of scissors as he cut up a credit card. The book was The Total Money Makeover by Dave Ramsey. Mommas, take a note of that. I'm going to say it again. The book was called The Total Money Makeover by Dave Ramsey. It looked like it might be interesting, so I picked it up and started to give it a skim. It wasn't long before I was hooked. One of the things that struck me about the book was that it featured the stories of ordinary people like me, who grew up in middle of the country towns and who earned middle of the road incomes. Also, like me, these people were drowning in mountains of debt. A huge percentage of their income was going toward debt repayment, and they decided that being broke was just too much for them to deal with anymore. Why work so hard if you are still broke at the end of the month? So, they followed the author's advice, and in just a couple of years, they paid off thousands of dollars in debt and were well on their way to building their investments and enjoying a financially stable future. There was no magic or funny business, no complicated formulas to learn, no overexcited guru telling people they could become millionaires if only they followed his obscure mindset practices. This book was different. It laid out a simple plan that anyone could follow, and I started to believe that I could do it too. I stood there and read that entire book cover to cover. I have since purchased lots of copies to give away as gifts. That was the day I vowed to get out of debt once and for all. You are in the sunken place. In Jordan Peele's movie Get Out, the main character gets tricked into falling into the sunken place, a semi-conscious state where he can no longer control his actions and is instead under the control of an external force set on taking advantage of him in perpetuity. Sound familiar? Being in debt is in the sunken place of our society. Debt is how companies keep us under their control, using slick marketing schemes to make us feel the constant need to buy things that we don't even need. And this marketing is genius. Last year's fashion is out. It's time to upgrade to the latest trends. Last year's iPhone is starting to malfunction. Time to get a new one. It's a constant barrage of messaging that makes you feel like you're missing out on the latest and greatest experiences. FOMO, fear of missing out, to the extreme. And the marketing is so subtle, it can be easy to miss. About a month ago, a friend invited me to go to the mall. I hadn't been to the mall in ages. I've become more of an online shopper these days and didn't expect the impact that it would have on me. The first thing I noticed was that everyone was walking around drinking these cute, milky pink beverages with slices of strawberries inside. They looked so delicious that I quickly became obsessed with figuring out what the drink was and where to get it so I could give it a taste. It was a Starbucks pink drink, if you're wondering, and it was pretty tasty. I also became intensely aware of all the cool outfits people were wearing. It was like a walking fashion show. I started to feel self-conscious in my clothes and vowed to spend a little bit more time getting dressed the next time around. People talk about keeping up with the Joneses as the peer pressure society places on us to buy things we don't need, just to impress people we don't even know. I was experiencing that firsthand. The truth is that we live in a consumerist society where buying the latest and greatest thing or paying for the Instagram worthy experience is what you feel like you have to do to fit in. We watch HGTV and start to think that our house needs some fixing up or that we should move to a nicer home. I can't think of how many people I've spoken to who have succumbed to the Peloton craze after watching their viral commercials and learning that their friend has one too. What about you? What do you find yourself wanting to buy after seeing advertising or that a friend already has it? We're all susceptible, and marketers are great at working their way into our psyches. Debt is also a powerful force that can keep us under control of our employers. Unfortunately, so many people accept jobs and working conditions they wouldn't otherwise have if they didn't need their paychecks to cover their debt payments. It becomes a vicious cycle where you hate your work. Sorry, let me run that back. It becomes a vicious cycle where you hate work, so you retreat to retail therapy for comfort. But then you generate so many bills that you end up needing that job even more. Ever find yourself making the argument that you deserve a brand new car, a new outfit, or an expensive home because you worked so hard? That's retail therapy at its best. Before you know it, you're broke, no matter how much you make, stuck in a job you despise, and waking up on Monday mornings yearning for Friday afternoon. If you need your job, that means your job controls you. You too are in the sunken place. Ooh, child. That was a bar. That was a bar right there. If you need your job, that means your job controls you. You too are in the sunken place. That's a bar, man. Wow. So, um, like I said, this is chapter 4 puts us almost halfway through the book. And yeah, man, debt is debt is a devil. Do you hear me? Like, and we're all in it. So many of us are in it, but and one of the reasons why I love this book is because it's a practical guide. Like, and I love how and don't get me wrong, like I'm all for like shifting your mindset and like kind of changing things in your everyday so that way changing your habits and stuff to have a better relationship with money. But this book this book beautifully outlines like practical ways to shift your mindset and actually putting it into action. Because it's one thing just to say like, oh, like I'm gonna, stop spending so much money on this and that. Like it takes more than that. Like that's not enough just to say it. Like you have to actually put in the work. And this book tells you exactly how to put in that work. So, so that is chapter 4. So go ahead, if you haven't already, and read through chapter 4. So next week when we meet, we will summarize chapter 4, and then we will get started on chapter 5, which is, let me see. Chapter 5 is called Dream. So we're going to see what Dream is talking about. But I hope you guys enjoyed today's book club meeting. And yeah, think about some ways how you can start tackling that debt. And I also too, one thing that I want you guys to know, and she does a great job of explaining in the book, like this type of shit like doesn't happen overnight, right? Like just you're not gonna pop up one day debt free, It's okay to take baby steps. And there's no shame in taking baby steps. Like, even if you're putting like $20 away per paycheck because that's what you can afford to do right now to go towards your debt, like, do it. Like, the main thing is to start. And you can get tips and tricks along the way, and like you can do your own research and go on YouTube and read books and stuff like that to learn how people have gotten themselves out of debt. And then whatever method most aligns with you in your life and what you can do, like then just do it. But the main thing is to at least try, you know, and so that way you can, like she said, like you won't need your job. Amen. Like you won't need it. And if something or the worst case scenario were to happen where you lost your job or like your job went away, then it won't be so detrimental because you never needed it in the first place. so, yeah. So I'm going to go ahead and land the plane there. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to today's episode. If you have not already, please follow me on Instagram at motherhood_ghetto, so that we can keep up with me and the kids. We can also share some dialogue about motherhood in the podcast episodes. And the Motherhood is Ghetto Self-Care Journal for Mothers is still available on Amazon. So you can order that on Amazon. I will have it linked in the show notes of this episode. And also too, and if you're in the book club or you've been listening to book club episodes and you don't have the book, The Black Girl's Guide to Financial Freedom, no worries. You can just keep tuning in every week as we talk about each chapter. And it's okay. It's all right. So, again, thank you guys so much for listening. And until next time, mamas. Thank you so much for listening to today's podcast. Don't forget to follow the podcast and share with anyone who you think may enjoy it. And follow me on Instagram at motherhood_ghetto. Also, feel free to DM me if you have any experiences, opinions, or views on motherhood you'd like me to share on the podcast. Until next time, mamas.